I mean, obviously the first question is where did all this start? What was your inspiration? What started you out? An unusual job, a winemaker. You're from Zululand.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Basically, getting into the wine industry, it was more because of a scholarship that I got. I basically had no idea of wine. I had never tasted it before, and I didn't know that it existed, actually. So when I got a scholarship from South African Airways after the recruitment that was done at school, I took the opportunity. And I think through working part-time as a student, I fell in love with wine, and I decided this is actually what I want to do.
And that was it, just like that.
Well,
You ended up, I'll tell you, she ended up at Stellenbosch University, got a degree in oenology, and has worked not only in South Africa, but in the sort of epicenter of great wine in France, and works with international winemakers. So she's being very modest. I want to read something that Aaron said a little while back, just to introduce you to Africa Lens. He said, since most stories told in Western media about the continent of Africa leave negative connotations, Africa Lens hopes to shine a light on the beauty, rich and diverse culture of Africa, both in the motherland and those who have migrated to foreign lands to pursue their dreams. And the work that Aaron's going to tell you about is absolutely breathtaking photography. Tell him where it all started.
Just wanting to create a platform where Africans can tell their own stories, made by Africans. I mean, I haven't seen so far any platform or magazine that are catered to true African stories told by Africans. So, and there's this creative revolution of young Africans trying to tell their own stories using internet, using photography. So I was like, okay, let me just create a platform that will push, that will elevate, that will inspire, and that will tell truthful stories. So stories that have substance, stories that come from a place of truth. And I mean, if the truth is told, I mean, there are a lot of things that can happen.
And some of the images you see up here are from Aaron's Africa Lens books, and they're quite stunning. Moving swiftly on, Maira, you're very well known. Of all of these people, you're probably the most notorious and famous.
Notorious?
Yeah.
I think she's more famous.
Probably more famous, but not as notorious. But so how did you start out? What gave you the inspiration to go into design?
Just an absolute love and passion for the land, and I think it, there's the incredible product that is Africa and the incredible soul that is Africa, but being an interpreter of that magic, when it's in the architectural and interior form, creating experiences for people from the world, being in it, because I kind of sit in that north-south place where I'm born and bred in Africa, but I have Greek, European ancestry. So I think that kind of thing of tying in the new world, the old world, the opportunities, the saturation, and kind of interpreting it and being a mouthpiece on what is Africa about. And being able to interpret it in a way that appeals and resonates with visitors, hopefully in an authentic and contextually relevant way.
And I'm sure a lot of you know the lodges that Maira's had involvement in. A lot of the wilderness lodges in Botswana. Segera, which is Jochen Zeitz's lodge in Kenya, which is very famous. So what you have to do is obviously absorb yourself in the environment that you're creating that lodge in. Is that right?
Absolutely, and I think also it's both. It's a number of things, and I know, Jochen's kind of owned and created the concept of the 4 C's: culture, conservation, community, and commerce, which we've kind of espoused in all our projects as well from having worked with that. But also with Wilderness Safaris over the past 15 years, great credit to them, is that if you work in different biomes, and we've worked in the deserts of northern Namibia, the jungle of actually the Congo, but the Republic of Congo for the Buffett Foundation, Sabine Plattner, you know, savannah, and you are inspired by the environment, and you almost need to channel that and say, what do you, I remember being actually in Nzala in the Congo, and climbing up a ladder and saying, tell me what you want to be, you know, what does it, and we kind of built these stilted camps that were in the canopy, so we could experience the tourism from the perspective of the gorillas, you know, so you can actually, so you interpret that in an aesthetic way that is pleasing, but that has also got a lot of the functional realities that people need.
Yeah.
So just an example.
So come on, Freshlyground. The band started in 2002. Is that right?
That is right.
And you rocketed to success. By 2003, you'd produced Nomvula,
We had, and that was sort of our biggest
big breakthrough hit.
breakthrough, that's right.
So how did the band come about? I mean, it's famously a multiracial band.
That's right.
Apparently your mic
Ah,
doesn't work.
thank you. I thought so.
You can start singing.
Thought I could hear myself.
Uncomfortable with the mic.
Yeah, give us a song.
Yeah, so yeah, it started right here in Cape Town actually, and we are a group of individuals who are coming largely from South Africa, a guy from Zimbabwe, a guy from Mozambique, a guy from Congo actually, and we just came.
So it's a really Pan-African band.
It is a Pan-African group, yes.
And is the music Pan-African?
I'd say so. I mean, not in an obvious way, not in a deliberate way. I would say it's just an amalgamation of all the influences that we've all taken on individually over the years. So we don't create music that to necessarily sound a particular way, you know, but it's just what comes out naturally, I'd say.
Yeah. And you are one of the most popular bands in South Africa. And you sell overseas.
Sure thing. No, we regularly do go overseas offshore, all over the place.
Right, back to my
Yeah.
favorite subject, which is winemaking.
You're thirsty.
Or wine consuming.
What there is a South African wine. There are South African wines. They've got a very particular taste. Are you making African wines, or are you making wines that sort of try and copy the European model? What sort of wine do you make?
I think South Africa is the wine industry in South Africa. We're like in the middle of both worlds. There's a new world wine style, there's an old world wine style. You will taste South African wines and you're gonna find there's a little bit of the influence of the European style. You're gonna get a little bit of the influence of the new world wine. So you're not gonna say basically we are fixed into one. So we've got the combination which brings actually the best of being who we are in South Africa. And on top of that, also, we do not fiddle much. We work with what we get in the country. We work with what we have in our vineyards. So we crop our vineyards the way we want to do it. And basically what we get from the vines is what comes up to the bottle.
I should mention, I've forgotten to mention actually, that the wine that Ntsiki makes is called Stellekaya, plug, and she makes wines under her own label. So keep an eye out for that. I think probably at the party tomorrow night, we're going to the place where we'll probably find some of your wines.
I think is it tomorrow or Thursday?
Oh, it's Thursday.
I think it's Thursday.
Gold, yeah.
Where the party will be, our wines are served at that restaurant, at the Grand.
Yeah, so look out for Stellekaya Wines. They are lovely, aren't they? Aaron, images. I mean, there's a history in South Africa, for example, of black photographers. Everyone thinks of Alf Kamara and people like that. But that was reportage rather than photography as art. Mm-hmm. From what I see of the work that you're putting together in Africa Lens, it's much more art. Is that right? Is that?
Not necessarily art, but it's different aspects of photography. So you have creative photography, you have social commentary, you have portrait photography. So you have different stories, different styles, different messages. So you have people and also from Africans in the diaspora as well. They also tell their stories. So there's not much known about Africans in the diaspora. So it's basically Africans telling their own stories. And it's quite amazing and quite an experience. I call it a visual journey because you don't know what to expect. You don't know what you learn. You don't know what you will discover. So I'll say it's a visual journey of Africans.
And how have you found the photographers? Where have you gone to?
The first one I looked up online and just did my research. But after that, after the first
Inundated.
volume was released, a whole lot of Africans keep emailing me, hey, what are the requirements? But like I said, all I look out for is photography with truth and substance. So if you have something to tell and something that's will be impactful, then you'll be featured.
So aspiring young African photographers, they know where to find you?
Yes.
Where do they find you? He lives in Accra, but by the way, you might detect a slight American accent. Aaron spent the last 10 years in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, of all places.
And that actually inspired creating African Lens.
Right.
During the 10 years living there, I can count the number of people that had good knowledge about Africa. There wasn't much. You ask someone and they'll be like, oh, so you're from Africa? Do you live in huts? And all these silly questions. And I always tell them, you have access to information right on the palm of your hand. You have the internet. But even that is not enough. So it's like, okay, creating a magazine or creating a publication will, in my opinion, help spread the word and put the message out there.
Yeah. And so I think you've put out 1 or 2 books.
Three.
Volumes,
yes.
Tell them
sorry. Yeah, so the website is
how
African
do you find African Lens, and how does this audience connect with the work that
through African Lens website, africanlens.co, and it's all 3 volumes are available online, and the physical copies and digital copies as well. Yes. Yes. And we ship worldwide as well.
I guess the next thing is about role models. So here you are, you're pioneering as young, creative Africans. Are you a role model? Are the young designers coming up? And are you inspiring a generation of new...
I'd hope people say that, but I think...
Do you feel an obligation to be a role model in Africa?
I think definitely. The simple answer is definitely. Also, to whom much is given, much is expected. You know, and even though I've had a very, very humble beginning, I think I've been exposed to the incredible beauty and opportunity of Africa. And I think you respond by actually giving it your all. You cannot be lukewarm about working in Africa, Indian Ocean Islands. You kind of dive in. You know, what started as a project on North Island in the Seychelles 14 years ago became a 14-year kind of experience and love affair and a constant kind of working experience. And a lot of those principles that are technically on a project actually become intrinsic to your life and the way you lead your life and the message you put out there and how you bring up your kids. So I think it's very pervasive, and it's, you know, it's an all-consuming thing. And as we were saying, it's almost like if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
So you kind of make a dream, you create your vision of what you think would be palatable. It just works for you. And surprisingly, suddenly, people just actually want to follow that vision. And now where we have 400 people in our companies, it's because you just start on your own with a solitary vision about this kind of just works for me and rocks my world. And it just happens that a lot of people join and think, actually, that rocks mine too. So I think just starting simply and authentically and being consistent with your message, with your offering, even if there's diversity in that offering, you know, because you can't get, you know, you're always creating a new product and new things, but if the spirit and the soulfulness and the authenticity is the line that kind of ties everything together, then I believe success will find you, and the role modeling and all those things and the mentorships, all of that comes anyway, as long as you have that solitary vision.
And is there such a thing as African design? Is there is it an inspired, are your designs inspired by what's around you, the continent?
Absolutely. You'd have to be highly disconnected not to be tremendously influenced and inspired by Africa. I think there is a narrative. I think even the international community has celebrated African design. Even if you just look at the Condé Nast Traveller UK Awards, and you find the kind of presence.
Which you won.
Yes, we have one. Best
She
of
said
the best
modern.
in the world. But we've been part of a collective group that
Yeah.
is responsible for all these things. Because Africa is about collectivity. It is about things coming together from many different places. And I think to a large extent, it's really just about pulling together different kind of like diverse things that shouldn't work together but do. And I think generally South Africa has been a great ambassador for Africa as well. And even though we've worked in kind of 19 countries.
Yeah.
And
I was
11
going
of
to
them
say,
in
again,
Africa.
we're talking about Pan-African.
Yeah.
Your company is a Pan-African company. You
Yeah.
work...
And there's so much
Did you say
opportunity.
19 countries?
Well, 19 countries in the world, 11 in
Oh, right.
Africa.
11 in
And,
Africa.
Yeah, and some commercial, not just ecotourism, business, commercial, restaurants,
Yeah, yeah.
hospitality. And I think that the interesting thing with that is even clients of ours in London and in parts of Europe, everyone has investments in Africa. Everyone sees the opportunity here. It's unsaturated. There is, in the middle of Uganda, we've done 5 projects. And just it's carrying on and on. Because Africa does work, not in the traditional sense that sometimes that people expect, but it really works. And the opportunity is there, just if the boundaries are down. Yeah. And we don't scare easy. We've often been in countries where they working in Kenya, where they'll be sending travel warnings for Africa and, from the UK and US. But the seasoned traveler, the mature traveler knows that, sometimes Ebola is closer to Europe than it is to kind of
Yes, don't
Southern
tell
Africa.
these
And
guys.
people are,
They found out about the Ebola scare
there's
last
so
year.
many misnomers and
Yeah.
so many kind of misinterpreted, kind of messages out there.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're the ambassadors of, the reality.
We talked about this before. I mean, what was your inspiration? And I mean, I'm aware of the great sort of music that came out of the townships in the 50s and 60s, Makeba and people like that. Is that a reference point for music, for South African musicians now?
Sure, I'd say so. I mean, certainly in our outfit there, we've got members who are, I think our oldest member is about 50, he's almost 55. And our youngest
Oh,
is...
he's a kid.
Totally young.
He's a child.
Totally young.
And our youngest member would be me now, I guess. I'm 35, so we've got a 20-year span within the band. And all of us have listened to such diverse offerings, from across not only the continent, but also the rest of the world. My inspiration has come from, it's very specific, I would say. I think it came from my Xhosa background. My dad was very into very traditional culture, so there would be a lot of ceremonies at my house, a lot of...
You grew up singing in your house?
I did. Yeah. I grew up singing in my house. I grew up with a lot of people coming into my house, kind of celebrating this very heady kind of ceremonies, like with, the kind of image that you might expect, the sangomas and the dancing through the night and the traditional beers and all that stuff. So
Are you
all
sure
of
you're
that
not
song. Well, there's so many similarities, isn't there? I mean, between all of these, yeah. So my inspiration started there, but as I grew up, it reached out into the rest of the world, and I think that is also what is part of being what is Africa. It's not just this. We're everything now. Yeah. We're global. Everyone is.
Yes, and actually, if you look at the development of popular music from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s, the British went back and raided the vaults in America, and so returned to America with American music. And African music,
which came from Africa.
Which came originally from Africa, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we live in a global village, and all musical influences are part of it. And I mean, I think probably more than any other South African band I've heard, Freshlyground reflects that. I mean, it is a global village band.
Well, sure thing. I mean, people have always struggled to place us. Yeah. People have always struggled to sell us, and I think one of the greatest obstacles that we had in the beginning was that we, there was a feeling that we wouldn't succeed. That it's too. You just can't put your finger on it, but I think that's what its strength is.
Those were record company executives.
Definitely. Yeah. We got terrible reviews in the
Did you
beginning.
really?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that is what the strength is, that we draw from all over. Yeah.
We're doing this as a round robin, so can I get back to my favorite subject, winemaking? South African winemaking evolved? I mean, in the apartheid days, the winemaking industry was kind of apart from the rest of the world. And actually, they weren't making particularly nice wines. I mean, people got used to them. There were a lot of virus-ridden vines around, weren't there? What happened when South Africa joined the world community in 94 and became a democracy was that winemaking changed here, didn't it?
The winemaking changed in a sense that winemakers started going outside to taste wines from different countries and finding out what's happening and coming back and implementing that back at home.
And bringing in new vines and new varieties.
Yes, and also young winemakers, we're getting more excited about the cultivars that are not known. We're getting excited other than just doing the normal Cabernets and the Merlots. We go for the Sangiovese, we go for, for all those varietals that are not used to be South African varietals. So in that way, things have slowly changed. And also, in terms of blends previously have been perceived as something that was like just something, a mix of something, so it's a lower end. But now we're focusing on saying actually the blended wines are the premium wines.
Well, it used to be just Cabernet and Chardonnay, didn't it?
Yes. So
that
now
was the South African wine industry, and a couple of horrible sweet wines as well.
So we've basically moved from that to make blends, make different varietals, unusual varietals, and I think the consumers are getting excited about trying things that are new, because I think also without them being excited to try new stuff, there would be no point for us to experiment.
But that's also part of, I think, the joy of working in Africa, South Africa, is that it's less rigid than, and they're less kind of the right way of doing things. And therein lies the freedom. When we started designing, I think one of the successes of North Island, for example, in the Seychelles, and it's an analogy that you've kind of inspired, is that where it was almost like bush lodge in the tropical island, where the model at the time was Balinese and very kind of, kind of perfect or kind of Mauritian French style. And I think to an extent, when you hybridize things that shouldn't work together, and barefoot luxury 15 years ago was actually quite a new concept, you know. And when you hybridize models, when you use an experience of a home in a, in a lodge or in a, and it's this kind of fusion of things that shouldn't work together that actually does work together. And I think South Africa and Africa allows itself, there are less rules, and that's where the creative element of disruption actually happens.
Was North Island, I mean, North Island's almost not an African lodge, is it? It's a sort of...
And yet it is. It's organic African. It's kind of, it's taking, it definitely has the trade routes and the spirit of things that pass through Africa. Africa is a continent, not a country. And there's just, it's just the most obvious thing, but so important to be understood. There's so much diversity, and all of that kind of, flows through. I think you could say that of any continent, of Europe, that there is this flow. But I think what it retains is a soulfulness and the feeling of a new world. It still retains it, even though it's the oldest kind of civilizations in the cradle, humankind. It still has that feeling that you can try something new. You can be you can create a different package. You can sell Africa differently. You can totally package it in your own way because it's less rigid.
You should know that when Maira arrived to start work on North Island, it was a rat-infested hellhole. And if you meet her afterwards for a drink, you might like to ask her to describe the size and nature of the rats. It's pretty scary stuff.
And Lantana up to here.
Yeah, and Lantana up to there, And it's now a fabulous honeymoon resort for the likes of Prince William and beloved
and Shakira, actually, didn't you?
Shakira, my friend.
Yes, your friend.
And something else that I forgot to mention was, your best friend is Shakira.
She's not my best friend.
Not your best friend. But you did
not mislead everybody in the room.
But you did make a very famous song with her.
Very
famous. It was a big hit that everyone remembers.
It was indeed, and that also was an African song. In fact, that's a Cameroonian song.
Is that really?
Yeah, the Waka Waka is a Cameroonian song, and it was, exactly.
Yeah,
it was written in the 60s. So Shakira somehow heard it in Colombia when she was growing up, and remembered this tune when she was when she was writing her offering to do the World Cup song. And we happened to be in New York. We happened to be, our producer has a studio in New York, and we were over there kind of producing our fourth studio album. And the guy who was producing the track for Shakira was in the same kind of building.
All right.
And he approached us. He said, "You want to check out this track? We're doing it for the World Cup." And we'd also never. And we checked it out. We listened to it. It was really cool. And then we wrote a bridge for the song, and that's how we got to collaborate with Shakira on the track.
It was a big hit.
It was alright.
Big
Yeah,
hit.
it did well.
Yeah, everyone knows it.
Big hit. Waka, waka, eh.
You're not going to sing it. Yeah.
No.
I could if you asked me, guys. You want to hear it?
Yeah, I
You
got
want to
it.
hear it?
Give us a bar.
Do you want to hear the chorus? You want to hear the verse? You want to hear the verse?
Chorus.
The chorus.
Yeah, go on.
Zamina mina waka waka zamina mina zamalewa zamina mina waka waka zamina mina zamalewa. This time for Africa.